The message arrives later than expected. Not late enough to cause damage, just late enough to change the sequence. You read it twice. Nothing in it is wrong, but the order is off. You already adjusted to a version of reality that no longer exists. And now the mind has to rewind without knowing where the mistake began. INFJ, INTJ, INFP, INTP types don't react to loss of control by reaching outward first. They react by tightening inward. The world assumes that when control breaks, people become chaotic. That's rarely true here. For INxx, chaos doesn't appear as movement. It appears as overprocessing, overmeaning, overcalculation, overfeeling. And the same fracture, loss of control, feels entirely different depending on which cognitive engine is running underneath. This is not about personality as style. This is about cognitive survival responses. Before separating the types, one correction is necessary. Control, for INxx, is not about dominance. It's about predictive coherence. NI wants the future to feel knowable. TI wants reality to remain internally consistent. FI wants the self to remain morally intact. FE wants relational systems to remain emotionally navigable. When control breaks, it's not because something went wrong. It's because the internal map no longer matches the terrain. And each INxx type responds by overusing their dominant function until it turns against them. INTJ doesn't lose control emotionally first. They lose strategic confidence. At the beginning, it looks functional. NI keeps projecting. TE keeps organizing. Plans are revised. Systems are rebuilt. Variables are re-ranked. From the outside, INTJ appears composed, perhaps even sharper than usual. This is the first lie. Internally, NI has stopped seeing. It's guessing. Patterns no longer converge naturally, so INTJ starts forcing alignment. They double down on efficiency. They increase structure. They eliminate ambiguity aggressively. Not because it works, but because not doing so feels like freefall. What once felt like vision becomes control obsession. What once felt like clarity becomes compulsive optimization. INTJ tells themselves, if I can just refine the system one more time, stability will return. But NI under stress doesn't create insight. It creates tunnel vision. TE follows blindly. This is where INTJ becomes rigid, not strong, decisive, but wrong, confident, but disconnected. What INTJ calls discipline here is often fear, wearing a checklist. When control breaks for INTJ, they don't adapt. They tighten. And tightening is not resilience. It's resistance to reality. INFJ loses control through emotional saturation, not strategy failure. NI still sees patterns. FE still tracks emotional currents. The problem is volume. Everyone's feelings become louder. Every relational ripple becomes significant. INFJ doesn't panic. They absorb. They try to stabilize the environment emotionally. They listen more. They smooth edges. They anticipate reactions. From the outside, INFJ looks generous, understanding, present. Inside, NI starts looping without resolution. Patterns don't close. They multiply. Meanings don't settle. They stack. FE begins prioritizing harmony at the cost of internal coherence. INFJ mistakes relational responsibility for control. They believe, if everyone feels okay, things won't fall apart. But emotional regulation is not structural stability. INFJ begins over-explaining themselves, over-contextualizing others, delaying decisions to preserve emotional balance. And quietly, resentment builds, not outwardly expressed, but internally corrosive. What INFJ calls empathy here is often avoidance of decisive rupture. When control breaks for INFJ, they don't confront the system. They manage feelings around it, and feelings don't fix failing structures. INFP doesn't lose control externally at all. They lose internal permission. FI begins questioning, is this still aligned with who I am? NE responds by generating alternatives, possibilities, narratives, moral reinterpretations. At first, this looks creative. INFP reframes the situation. They search for meaning. They consider different values at play. But under stress, FI stops grounding and starts fragmenting. Every option feels partially wrong. Every choice feels like a betrayal of some internal truth. NE expands endlessly, but FI cannot choose. What once felt like authenticity becomes paralysis. INFP withdraws. Not because they don't care, but because acting without full moral clarity feels violent to the self. They may appear passive, undecided, detached. Internally, they are exhausted from holding too many incompatible values at once. What INFP calls integrity here is sometimes refusal to accept moral loss. When control breaks for INFP, they don't fight reality. They disappear into meaning. And meaning, when unchecked, becomes a hiding place. INTP doesn't feel loss of control emotionally first. They experience cognitive destabilization. TI demands internal consistency. NE feeds it possibilities. When reality no longer fits existing models, INTP doesn't react. They suspend. They stop acting. They stop committing. They analyze endlessly. They rebuild frameworks internally while external systems decay. At first, this feels responsible. I need to understand this properly before moving. But stress turns TI inward to the point of isolation. NE generates so many countermodels that no conclusion feels justified. What once felt like intellectual rigor becomes decision starvation. INTP disconnects from urgency. Deadlines feel artificial. Consequences feel abstract. Others interpret this as indifference. It isn't. It's overload. What INTP calls objectivity here is often detachment masquerading as intelligence. When control breaks for INTP, they don't restore order. They retreat into theory. And theory does not stop systems from collapsing. Same event, same instability, different internal failures. INTJ tries to rebuild control externally through stricter systems. INFJ tries to stabilize control emotionally through relational management. INFP tries to preserve control internally through value realignment. INTP tries to regain control cognitively through model reconstruction. Each believes their response is rational. Each response contains the same flaw. They all delay engagement with uncomfortable reality. Different functions, same avoidance, expressed differently. Here is the contradiction every INxx faces under stress. Their greatest strength becomes their limiter. Insight becomes fixation. Empathy becomes emotional labor. Values become immobility. Logic becomes delay. And none of it feels wrong while it's happening. That's why it lasts. Loss of control exposes how much identity was built on anticipation. Not presence, not adaptability. Prediction. Control doesn't break loudly for INxx types. It dissolves quietly, while they're still thinking they're managing it. And by the time they realize what's missing, they've already adapted to functioning without certainty. Not healed, not resolved, just operational. And the unsettling part? Most INxx don't ask how to regain control. They ask how to endure without it. That question stays open.